There's something powerful about the way God works behind the scenes. When we look at our lives and wonder why certain doors haven't opened yet, or why we're still waiting for the thing we've been praying about for years, it can feel discouraging. But the truth is, God is preparing you. And that preparation doesn't happen in the spotlight. It happens in the shadows, in the silence, in the hidden places where no one else sees. Think about David. When the prophet Samuel came looking for a king, Jesse brought out all his sons except one. David was left in the field tending sheep. He wasn't overlooked by accident. He was hidden by design. God was preparing David in that field. While his brothers were being paraded in front of the prophet, David was wrestling lions and bears, learning how to protect what was entrusted to him, learning faith, worship, and obedience in isolation. So when Goliath showed up, David didn't become a warrior that day. He had already been prepared. The battle was just the unveiling of what had been built in private. Some of you are in your field season right now. You're doing work that feels unseen. You're showing up, being faithful, but no one's calling your name. You've got dreams in your heart that don't match your current reality. And it can make you question, did I miss it? Did God forget me? Let me tell you this, God hides what he values. When a diamond is formed, it's hidden deep underground under pressure. A seed doesn't grow on a mountaintop. It grows underground, in darkness, before it ever breaks through the soil. Your preparation season is not punishment, it's protection. It's process, it's purpose. We live in a culture that celebrates the reveal, the spotlight, the moment when it all finally comes together. But God celebrates the preparation. He's not impressed by your platform. He's moved by your posture. Because the truth is, if God gave some of us what we're praying for right now, we wouldn't be ready to handle it. We're asking for influence, but we're still offended easily. We're asking for promotion, but we haven't learned submission. We want the crown, but haven't been shaped to carry the weight that comes with it. So God says, I love you too much to release you prematurely. I'd rather have you prepared than promoted too early. And if you look back over your life, you'll realize he's been preparing you all along. That season where you felt overlooked, it taught you humility. That job that didn't work out, it built resilience. That heartbreak that nearly broke you, it taught you how to heal, how to trust again, how to get back up. Nothing has been wasted, not a single moment, not a single tear, not a single delay. It was all part of the preparation. And here's what's wild. God doesn't need an audience to prepare you. He doesn't need a crowd to validate what he's doing in you. Some of your greatest growth will happen when no one is clapping, when no one is cheering you on. When it's just you, God, and your obedience, that's when roots grow deep. That's when character is shaped. That's when trust is formed. Because if your calling is big, your preparation will be even bigger. And the deeper the foundation, the taller the building can rise. So don't despise the season you're in. Don't rush it. Don't try to skip the steps. There is something sacred about being hidden. There is something powerful about being prepared when no one's watching. Because when God finally brings you into your moment, when the door opens, when the opportunity comes, you won't have to scramble to rise to it. You'll already be ready. Not because you performed your way into it, but because you were processed into it. God is not just preparing things for you. He's preparing you for the things. He's working on your integrity, your mindset, your capacity. He's not looking for perfect people. He's looking for prepared people. People who've been through the fire and still said yes. People who've been overlooked but stayed faithful. People who've worshipped in the wilderness and trusted even when they didn't understand. So if you're in a place where you feel hidden, where you feel like things are moving for everyone else but you, take heart. God hasn't forgotten you. He's just not done preparing you yet. It's easy to believe in God's promises when everything's going according to plan. When doors open, when prayers get answered, when life lines up the way we hoped, that's when faith feels effortless. But what about the seasons when everything seems quiet? When the vision is clear but the path is unclear? When nothing looks like what God said? That's where preparation gets real. And this is the truth I need you to hear today. The process is proof of his plan. You see, God never wastes time. He doesn't deal in random moments or accidental seasons. Every delay, every detour, every disappointment is part of a larger process. It may not feel like it, but the stretching, the silence, even the suffering, it's all connected to what He's building in you. Because while we're focused on the destination, God is focused on the development. And if we can learn to embrace the process, we'll realize that what feels like a setback is actually a setup for something far greater than we imagined. Joseph had a dream, clear, powerful, and from God. But after the dream came the pit, then slavery, then prison for years. Nothing looked like what God had promised. If we were in Joseph's shoes, many of us would have given up halfway through. We would have assumed the dream was just our imagination. But God was in the pit. He was in the prison. He was using every painful moment to refine Joseph's heart, build his endurance, and prepare his character to carry what was coming. Because if Joseph had stepped into the palace too early, he wouldn't have been able to lead it. The pain was necessary. The process was essential. We don't like process. We want fast results, overnight answers. We want God to show us the blueprint and then rush the build. But God doesn't microwave greatness. He slow cooks it. And in that slow cooking, there's breaking, there's testing, and there's waiting. And it's in the waiting that we're tempted to walk away. But hear me, don't quit just because it's hard. Don't assume God has abandoned you just because it's uncomfortable. The pressure you feel is not punishment, it's preparation. The process is proof that God is working. Some of you are asking, why is this taking so long? But maybe the better question is, what is God doing in me during this time? Because while you're waiting for things to change around you, God is often changing something within you. He's building endurance. He's teaching you how to trust without clarity. He's shaping your identity not around what you do, but around who you are in Him. And here's what I've learned. The deeper the process, the stronger the foundation. And when God builds a foundation, He digs deep. He'll dig through pride, insecurity, fear, doubt, whatever doesn't belong in your next level. Because what God is preparing you for will require a version of you that isn't ruled by your emotions, isn't easily shaken, and doesn't need constant validation to keep going. He's preparing you to stand, not just be seen. Let's not be so obsessed with the promise that we skip the preparation. Because if you get the promise without the process, it will crush you. And God loves you too much to let that happen. That's why He's walking with you through the fire, not pulling you out of it too soon. That's why the door hasn't opened yet, because He's still strengthening your capacity to handle what's behind it. And when that moment comes, when the breakthrough arrives, you won't just be ready. You'll be grateful for the process that shaped you for it. This is where faith has to grow up. It can't just be about believing for blessings. It has to be about trusting in the middle, trusting when there's no evidence yet, trusting when the timeline makes no sense. That's real faith, not just in the promise, but in the one who made the promise. Believing that if He spoke it, He'll finish it. Even if it takes longer than we expected, even if it looks different than we imagined. You may not see the full picture right now, but God does. He's the author, and He doesn't write incomplete stories. The process you're in is not the end, it's just a chapter. And the fact that you're still here, still breathing, still believing, is evidence that He's not done with you yet. The process is proof that the plan is still in motion. Some of the most powerful seasons in our lives don't come when everything is blooming and full of clarity. They come when we feel like we're in the middle of nowhere, confused, stretched dry, and wondering where God is. That's the wilderness. And I know it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel exciting. But let me tell you something. The wilderness isn't a mistake. It's a training ground. The wilderness is where God strips away distractions. It's where He quiets the noise around us so we can finally hear Him clearly. We often ask God to speak, but when He starts removing things that used to occupy our attention, we panic. We think we're being punished. But the wilderness isn't punishment. It's preparation. And if God has led you into it, there's something He wants to give you in it. Something you won't find in comfort. Something you won't discover when life is easy. Before Jesus ever performed a miracle, before He ever stood before crowds and healed the sick or raised the dead, the Spirit led Him into the wilderness. Not the enemy, not a mistake, the Spirit. And for 40 days He fasted, He fought temptation, and He faced isolation. Why? Because before the public ministry came private surrender. Before the anointing was activated, the identity had to be affirmed. This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. That was the foundation. The wilderness doesn't make you, it reveals you. And it teaches you to stand on what God says about you, not what the world thinks of you. Some of you are in a wilderness right now. You're praying and not hearing answers. You're moving but not seeing results. You're faithful, but nothing is shifting. And it's frustrating. But I need you to shift your perspective. The wilderness isn't where God leaves you. It's where He meets you. It's where He matures you. It's where you stop leaning on your own strength and start depending completely on Him. It's where your character gets shaped, where your identity gets grounded, and where your faith gets roots. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before he ever stood in front of Pharaoh. Why? Because leadership in God's kingdom doesn't start with a stage. It starts with surrender. It starts in silence. It starts when no one's watching. The man who would one day part the Red Sea was first a shepherd in the desert, learning how to lead sheep before he could lead a nation. That season wasn't wasted. It was necessary. And let me tell you, the wilderness is also where idols get exposed. You find out real quick what you've been depending on when God removes everything else. When the job, the title, the relationship, the routine, it all gets stripped away and all you have left is Him. That's where real trust is born. Not the kind of trust we sing about on Sunday, but the kind you walk out on Monday when nothing makes sense. The kind where you say, God, I don't understand this, but I still believe You're good. You won't always get answers in the wilderness, but you will get alignment. You may not get clarity, but you will get closeness. And that's the goal. Not just to reach the promise, but to know the promiser. God didn't lead the Israelites into the desert just to bring them out. He led them there to shape them, to reveal Himself to them, to teach them dependence. Manna didn't fall in Egypt. It fell in the wilderness. Water didn't come from the rock in the promised land. It came in the dry place. Miracles happen in wilderness seasons. You just have to open your eyes. And don't forget, the wilderness is temporary. It's a season, not a sentence. It's not your final destination. It's a part of your preparation. But how you walk through it matters. Will you complain, or will you learn? Will you resist, or will you surrender? Will you try to rush out, or will you let God finish what He started in you? You're not lost. You're being led. You're not abandoned. You're being aligned. This is the place where pride dies and purpose is born. Where comfort is replaced with calling. Where God gets rid of what can't come with you into your next season. So don't despise the wilderness. Embrace it. Learn from it. Let it do its work. Because if God has you in the wilderness, He's not punishing you. He's preparing you. One of the biggest misconceptions we carry is that preparation only looks like big moments, massive leaps of faith, life-altering decisions, public breakthroughs. But most of the time, God prepares us through quiet obedience. Not the flashy kind. Not the type that draws applause. The kind of obedience that shows up in the small, ordinary, even inconvenient things. Because in God's eyes, obedience is never small. It's the soil where trust grows. It's the test before the promotion. We keep asking God for the next level, the next opportunity, the next door. But the question isn't just what we're praying for. It's what we're prepared for. And preparation doesn't begin when the opportunity shows up. It begins when we start obeying Him right where we are. That's the setup most people miss. We're waiting for something big, and God is watching how we handle the small. That's how the kingdom works. Faithfulness in the little qualifies you for the much. Think about the story of Naaman, a respected commander, powerful, successful, but with one problem. He had leprosy. He goes to the prophet Elisha hoping for a miracle. He's expecting fireworks, maybe something dramatic to match his status. But Elisha doesn't even come out to meet him. He sends a messenger to tell Naaman to dip 7 times in the Jordan River, and Naaman almost walks away angry, because it didn't look like the breakthrough he expected. It looked too simple, too beneath him. But when he finally humbled himself and obeyed, even though it didn't make sense, healing came. That's how God works. He hides power in obedience. Sometimes the greatest breakthrough comes wrapped in a task that looks beneath us. Forgive that person. Stay at that job a little longer. Serve without recognition. Give when it's uncomfortable. Pray when it feels dry. These don't always feel spiritual, but they are deeply supernatural. They shape your heart, they train your spirit, and they signal to heaven, I can be trusted. We want mountain-moving faith, but we skip over mustard seed obedience. God's not looking for people who can just declare the word. He's looking for people who will walk it out. When he told Abraham to leave his country and go to a land he didn't know, there was no map, no full explanation, just one word, go. And Abraham obeyed. That obedience changed everything. He didn't have all the answers, but he had enough trust to move. And that trust expressed in obedience became the foundation of a promise that outlived him. Sometimes God will test you in hidden places to see how you respond when no one's watching. Will you still pray even when you don't get a quick answer? Will you keep sowing into that dream even when no one claps for you? Will you give your best in the quiet, thankless parts of life? Because the way you steward this season is speaking louder than you think. God watches how you handle what feels insignificant. Because to him, nothing is wasted. Every yes matters. You don't need a platform to be obedient. You don't need an audience to be faithful. Some of the greatest preparation is happening in your daily decisions. How you manage your time, how you treat people, how you respond when things don't go your way. These are the places where obedience is tested and your readiness is revealed. And let me tell you, obedience is not always easy. Sometimes it feels like dying to your will. Sometimes it costs you comfort, relationships, or understanding. But every act of obedience becomes a seed. You may not see the harvest yet, but it's coming. The ground doesn't shake every time you plant a seed, but something is happening beneath the surface. That's how obedience works, quiet, unseen, but powerful. There's a story in the gospel where Jesus tells Peter to cast his net again after a night of catching nothing. Peter's tired. He's a skilled fisherman. Logically, it makes no sense. But he says something powerful. Nevertheless, at your word, I will. That's obedience. Not because it's logical, not because it feels good, but because God said so. And because Peter obeyed, the nets overflowed. That one act of obedience shifted everything. What if the next breakthrough in your life isn't waiting on a new strategy, but on your next step of obedience? What if the door isn't locked, it's just voice activated by your yes? That thing you've been waiting on. God might be waiting on you. Not to figure it all out, but to trust him enough to do the last thing he told you. Because the next level is always connected to your last instruction. So don't underestimate the power of your obedience. It may not look like much now, but it's doing more than you can imagine. There's something we don't talk about enough in preparation seasons, and that's pain. We want purpose, we want calling, we want impact. But what we don't always realize is that pain is often the doorway to all of it. We think the oil only flows in the blessing, but sometimes it flows in the breaking. And I get it. Pain doesn't feel like preparation. It feels like abandonment. It feels like loss. It feels like something's gone wrong. But the truth is, God will often use your deepest pain to reveal your highest purpose. You don't have to look very far in Scripture to see how true that is. Look at Joseph again. His pain wasn't just the pit. It was being betrayed by his own brothers. It was being falsely accused, thrown into prison, forgotten by people he helped. But even in all of that, God was preparing him. Because when the famine hit, Joseph was the only one positioned to provide for nations. Not in spite of his pain, but because of it. What the enemy meant for evil, God used to build a platform. And Joseph wasn't bitter, he was ready. Because pain taught him how to manage power with grace. I think sometimes we underestimate how much our pain is shaping us. We think healing is just about moving on, but it's also about being made into someone new. Pain has a way of stripping away the things we used to depend on. It humbles us. It softens us. It teaches us empathy. It teaches us patience. The version of you that's going to walk into your calling can't be shallow. It can't be easily offended. It can't quit when things get hard. So God allows pain, not to destroy you, but to refine you. I know you didn't choose what happened. You didn't ask for that heartbreak. You didn't see the loss coming. You didn't think you'd still be healing from something that hit you years ago. But let me tell you something. Just because it hurt doesn't mean it was meaningless. Just because it broke you doesn't mean it was wasted. God never wastes pain. He recycles it. He redeems it. And when you put it back in His hands, He'll turn it into something you couldn't have scripted if you tried. Sometimes your greatest ministry comes from your deepest wounds. The things you tried to hide, the things you thought disqualified you, those might be the very things God uses to reach someone else. Your scars tell a story, not of your defeat, but of your survival. And if you're still here, if you're still breathing, that means there's more for you to do. You didn't go through all of that for nothing. You went through it so you could come out stronger, wiser, more compassionate, and ready. Think about Jesus. He didn't skip the pain. He endured the cross. Not because he deserved it, but because there was purpose on the other side of it. And because of that pain, we all now have access to freedom. That's the power of redemptive pain. It doesn't just transform you. It impacts everyone around you. It multiplies. So don't run from the process of healing. Don't shut down the work God is doing in your heart just because it hurts. Let Him finish what He started. Let Him turn your mourning into strength. I know some of you are in the middle of it right now. You're tired. You're asking God why it had to happen this way. You're trying to make sense of it all. And I won't stand here and pretend to have every answer. But I will say this, what you've been through isn't the end of your story. It might just be the chapter that unlocks your next level. Because pain creates space. It opens doors in our spirit that comfort never could. It causes us to seek God deeper, to listen differently, to lead from a place of authenticity. And when you get to the other side of it, you're going to see it. You'll look back and realize that God didn't just prepare a table before you. He prepared you for the table. And the fire you walked through, it refined you. The tears you cried, they watered the soil of your next season. The things you lost, they made room for what's coming. You may not have seen it while it was happening, but pain has been doing a holy work in you. So no, the pain didn't feel good, but it had a purpose. There's a moment in your journey where everything shifts. Not because your situation has changed, but because your perspective has. It's the moment when you stop waiting to feel ready and start realizing you already are. See, sometimes we keep asking God to prepare us, not realizing that He already has. We think preparation always looks like more information, more confirmation, more signs. But at some point, faith means stepping out even when you still have questions. Preparation doesn't always come with a trumpet sound or a perfect checklist. Sometimes it comes in the quiet confidence that God has already equipped you for what's next. The enemy loves to convince you that you're not ready. He'll whisper things like, "You don't have enough experience. You're not gifted enough. You're still too broken. You need to wait a little longer." And so you keep rehearsing your insecurities instead of stepping into your assignment. But here's the truth, what God has placed in you is not waiting on your perfection. It's waiting on your obedience. And when you finally move, when you finally say yes, you'll realize that everything you walked through, the waiting, the wilderness, the obedience, the pain, it wasn't random. It was all preparation. And now, it's time. We've spent too long talking ourselves out of what God already spoke over us. Too long shrinking to fit the comfort of others. Too long delaying purpose in the name of just making sure. But there comes a moment where you have to stop preparing for the season you're already in. You have to stop rehearsing for a race that has already started. At some point, the most spiritual thing you can do is move. David didn't look like he was ready. When the prophet came to anoint a king, he wasn't even in the lineup. He was out in the field tending sheep. But what no one else saw, God saw. God saw the battles he fought in private. God saw the songs he wrote when no one was listening. God saw the heart behind his worship and the strength he built defending his flock. That was preparation. It didn't look like much to others, but it was exactly what God needed for what was coming next. So when David stepped up to face Goliath, he didn't need Saul's armor. He didn't need more time. He needed to trust that who God had built him to be was enough. And that's where many of us stand today, on the edge of something greater, holding the sling in our hand, but still questioning if we're ready. Let me remind you, you are not starting from scratch. You are stepping into something you've been built for. God didn't randomly choose you. He shaped you for this. And He's not looking for flawless people. He's looking for available ones. People who are willing to move, even if their knees are shaking. People who are willing to show up, even if their voice trembles. People who understand that obedience isn't about having it all together. It's about trusting the one who holds it all. Sometimes, you won't feel the power until you start moving. You won't feel the oil until you open your mouth. You won't see the provision until you take the step. That's how faith works. It's not waiting for all the pieces to align. It's moving because God already said, go. The provision, the favor, the anointing. It meets you in motion. That's why you can't afford to sit on your calling another year. The world doesn't need a perfect version of you. It needs the obedient version. And listen, starting doesn't mean you'll have every detail. Starting doesn't mean the road will be easy. But it means you've made a decision to trust the God who has been preparing you in the background this whole time. It means you're not letting fear be your decision maker anymore. It means you're done waiting for someone else to tell you you're enough. You've heard from God, and that's more than enough. Everything you've walked through has been pointing to this moment. Every closed door, every silent night, every test and tear, it was building something in you. And now the season has shifted. This is the time to walk like you know who you are, to speak like you know what's inside you, to move like you believe it's already yours. Because it is. You're not being prepared anymore. You've been prepared.